The movie begins in the lower area of a building that is in ruins due to a severe bombing where a man is approaching a small pond to get a drink of water. Just as he bends down, a hand reaches out from the water and drags the man inside, while gunfire takes out his lounging friend. The group of US military soldiers then slowly make it from floor to floor, checking that the perimeter is safe. Once they're sure everything is clear, John, one of the men in the group, looks out at the ruined city of Aleppo. Once more soldiers had moved in, the lieutenant commander approached a man sent from the CIA by the name of Robert and asked him to brief them on the mission. Once the team is gathered, Robert explains that the mission was to rescue a hostage who is a CIA operative held by Syrian government forces in a nearby building. Once they're done with the briefing, the team goes out using the night as cover and makes their way to the identified building. After taking out the guards holding them hostage, they find an operative tied up in one of the rooms. While Robert confirms the man's identity, John checks the bags lying around and finds Russian equipment. Confused due to the wrong information, John asks Robert about the equipment, but Robert denies the whole thing. Taking out the rest of the enemy soldiers, John and Karen rendezvous with the remaining team outside and jump into the awaiting helicopter. Inside, John accuses Robert of withholding information about the mission, but Robert smugly tells him that he just needs to do his job. After returning home after their tour, John is at a family function with his pregnant wife, Pam. Meanwhile, one of John's teammates, Rowdy, is suddenly killed in a hit-and-run outside of his house. Out in the city, another teammate, Keith, is gunned down by masked men in the same van that had run over Rowdy. Returning home and tucking his wife to sleep, John is enjoying some music in the guest room, his headphones in his ears. Suddenly noticing that the lights were out, John got up from the couch and looked around, noticing that there were intruders in his house. Although he manages to shoot most of them and injure one, John is severely hurt from multiple gunshot wounds. Dragging himself to the bed where his wife had been murdered, he tries to check on her but realizes it's already too late and passes out. After the consecutive attacks, CIA operative Robert briefs the intelligence agency of recent events, informing them of John's current condition. After explaining that the remaining team that had executed the mission in Syria was given protection, Robert tries to leave, but is confronted by Karen, who's angry about the death of her men. After the upsetting conversation, Karen goes out to visit John in the hospital, who's finally awake. John is devastated by his wife's death and begs Karen to give him the name of the man who had escaped, but she tells him that she cannot disclose that information. As the days go by, John is made to go through physical therapy to help him gain his strength, but his anger and his sadness from his wife's death could never subside. Several weeks later, Karen is called in by the secretary to get a briefing from Robert about the rescue mission they had undertaken. Taking out pictures from his briefcase, Robert shows them to the security and Karen, explaining that they were the identities of FSP agents who had been sent by Russians to kill the US soldiers as payback. Robert explains that the CIA director doesn't want them to do anything regarding the situation, which upset Karen, who's still upset about her men. After the meeting, Karen goes to meet John and offers him a drink, as she knows she's about to deliver some bad news. She then explains what she has heard and gives him all the details she knows, going against her confidentiality agreement. After leaving the hospital and formulating a plan to get more information, John heads to the Russian embassy and is fended off by the guards, who assume that he's a drunk pedestrian, but manages to see the man he's looking for. Following the Russian diplomat, John crashes his car into the man's vehicle, trapping it so he's unable to get out. Rushing toward the diplomat's car, John shoots the man, threatening him to give up the name of the escaped murderer. With his last breath, the diplomat blurts out a name, prompting John to shoot him in the head. Soon after, the police arrive at the vicinity and put John into custody. After being incarcerated, John is visited by Karen and asks her to give the secretary a message. He explains to her that it was not a coincidence that he ended up in a prison full of Russian mobsters, and tells her that they'd be able to get him there. A few hours after he's returned to his cell, John is asked by one of the guards to prepare for transport. When he doesn't get any more information, John refuses to comply, telling the guard he's not moving until he gets full details. As soon as the guard leaves, John realizes that something bad is coming his way and prepares for a fight. A few minutes later, his room is swarmed by 4 guards dressed in full gear and holding buttons. Although he manages to incapacitate the 4 guards, more begin to pour into his room, but he manages to keep them at bay by threatening to kill one of the guards. A few minutes later, John is approached by a marshal, who hands him a phone with Karen on the other side. After assuring him that he's safe, John agrees to go with the marshal and is transported to a safe location where higher officials are waiting for him. After being escorted into one of the rooms, John meets Robert, the secretary, and Sarah, the director of the CIA. Once he takes a seat, he mentions the name Victor, which puts a shocked face on the three officials. When he asks who the man was, Robert tells him that he was an agent in the Russian Special Forces and had embedded agents all around the country. Robert continues to explain that Victor is dead and puts the man's pictures amongst several other men, asking John to pick the right one. Without any hesitation, John picks out the man he had seen in his house as Victor. The group is surprised by the accurate response and decides to send John along with the team led by Karen to check out the situation. Once the team is put together, they're made to fly on a civilian airplane to avoid suspicions from Russia. On the plane ride there, John and Karen sit side by side, while John tells his friend that he's going to make everything right because he feels guilty for his family's death. Concerned about John, Karen warns him that they're not on a revenge mission, but rather an extraction, warning him not to do anything stupid. A few hours later, the team is informed that they need to get ready to jump out as they've arrived at their location. Just as they're all geared up and about to jump, they see Russian jets approaching and realize that they've been identified as hostile. Before any warning is given, their plane is shot down, causing them to crash into the ocean. Although no one is wounded, John realizes that their gear is trapped inside half of the plane that was sinking. Driving inside, John fetches the abandoned gear and swims back up to his friends. The group manages to infiltrate the portable boat and make their way to the docking area, sneaking into land secretively. After they find a place to regroup, John tells them that he finds Robert suspicious, as he's the only one who isn't on the plane with them. Heading to the rendezvous area, John and his team surprise Robert and the remaining agents watching the news of the crash. Grabbing Robert by the neck, he forces him to tell him what's going on, but Robert explains in choked breaths that he was trying to capture Victor as well, because he thought John and his team were dead. Although he has his doubts, John lets go of Robert, agreeing to work together to capture Victor. Heading out of their hideout concealed in a red van, the group arrives at a secret location where the operation is set up. Across the building, John uses his gun to see Victor walking around in his flat and has the overwhelming urge to shoot him, but manages to control himself. That night, the crew undergoes an overt mission to capture Victor. Going off mission so he can confront Victor, John sneaks into the man's flat and is shocked when he sees him wearing a suicide vest. Seeming calm and collected, Victor tells John that they were just pawns in the larger conspiracy. Telling him that the only value there was to die, Victor detonates the bomb, creating a large explosion. Although a bit disoriented from the explosion, John immediately tells the others what he heard from Victor, but he's interrupted by two snipers from across the building. While huddling down and waiting to formulate their next plan, the group notices Russian police officers being killed by the snipers, and realize they're being set up to look like they've killed them. John explains that the Russians they found in his house weren't a coincidence and that they were meant to die in Russia to ignite a war. Realizing that everything is out in the open, Robert tells the others that the CIA is trying to start a war against Russia, and they need viable reasons. Unwilling to go down without a fight, John blows up a hole in the wall so they'd be able to get to the snipers before they kill them all. After Karen and John take out the snipers, they get the group to safety, although one of their members was fatally hurt and passes away. Realizing that they're trapped, John decides to cover for them by becoming the fall guy. Going to the roof, he fires on the police, distracting them while his team escapes. Although he's trapped by the Russian soldiers firing at him, John attempts to escape but has a difficult time as the place is swarming with reinforcements. Creating an explosion to distract the massive soldiers, John quickly dresses up as one of the fallen soldiers and escapes the vicinity. Stealing a car, John, severely hurt, drives to the rendezvous spot where the team is waiting for him near the docking area. On their way back home, Robert sees that John would only go back to jail and suggests that they report he had died in Russia, allowing John to find out who was behind the schemes. In Washington, John sneaks up on the secretary in the bathroom and confronts his suspicion that he was behind it by telling him information he wouldn't have known. Kidnapping the secretary and driving him to the farm he had, John threatens the man's family, forcing him to confess the truth. After hearing the plot they had orchestrated to give the American people an enemy they can fear, John drives the car into the river, attempting to kill the secretary and himself. After watching the secretary die, John sits in the car, slowly drowning and thinking about his departed wife. Days later, a funeral was held for John and his wife Pam, both buried with the honor deserving of an honorable soldier. After the ceremony, Karen gets inside her car where John is waiting for her in the back seat. In a flashback, we see John being rescued from the river by Karen and taking the recording device he had hidden in the car as proof. After handing the proof to Robert, Taryn takes John to the train station and gives him a different alias to start his new life. After exchanging a brief goodbye, John walks away to start his new life. And with that, the movie ends.